Welcome back, my friends, to a massive week of Starship updates, not just at one launch site, but 3 in action. We have a string of neat stuff to see around all the various locations. With that, the urgent return for Crew 11, Falcon 9 sending some sweet missions into orbit in this unique rideshare, an update on epic lunar action coming with the Artemis II mission rolling out, and even the largest moon lander ever made successfully moving to the final stage. All that and even more this week, so let's get started.
Okay, Niall, we can see you coming down the ladder now.
Hey, Marcus House with you here, and we've had quite the week with the launch site activity, not just at Texas, but we've also got 3 sites now worth keeping a close eye on. Of course, we have the best views at the city of Starbase. Pad 1 is having a rapid transformation. As we saw last week, we had the sheet piling hammer laid over here, preparing to make quick work of removing all these sheet pilings. This week, they had already taken all the dirt that was stored over in the water retention pond area and backfilled the whole site. We've seen this pile driller at work over here in the tank farm the last few weeks, and with the shape of the site that it is drilling, within it seems like it could be the foundation for multiple cryogenic storage tanks. I guess it's possible that the 3 tanks being stored over at the port right now may actually come here to replace the smaller methane tanks, but we'll soon find out. It's likely that the pile driller, once done in the tank farm area, will head right over to Pad 1 and begin to drill the piles for the new flame trench and orbital launch mount. Now, although it is a tough job breaking out the old foundational work to get down that far, as a bonus, there will be well-established old piles that will help support the new structure. That includes the huge piles that held up the 6 legs of the previous mount and the mass of smaller piles that surrounded it all, shown here by the awesome Ryan Hansen Space. You can see over here behind the tower that they have already begun to stockpile rebar cages for all this work, and then the next step would be the installation of the new sheet piles as we watched SpaceX install for Pad 2. Thanks to RGV aerial photography's flyover here, we can see the last 2 deluge tanks were still there, but during the week, the workers rolled over one of their shorter cranes and removed them so that they could be quickly transported away to the McGregor site to either be reused in future or simply sold off. We've also seen the large methane tank here before that was shipped off site too, which previously sat here within the tank farm. Now, throughout the week, SpaceX is clearly gearing up to finalise a series of items to be checked off the list at Pad 2. The arms and their new actuators could be seen twitching back and forth for hours on the live cameras. These tests are usually done to fine-tune their software and allow them to tune out and avoid any detrimental resonance issues. There's a lot of mass in those arms, and movements done at specific frequencies can build up a lot of tower movement. It's been speculated that the large white section of shielding towards the back of the actuators may contain many more valve assemblies than the previous actuators. If so, this should give them much more control over hydraulic fluid flow within them. The ship quick disconnect arm, including the end section, is largely installed now too, and the crane has left the area. I can't wait to see this new and much cleaner design in action. We got to see them testing the actuation of the arm here on Wednesday, where it was moved a little at a time into the fully deployed position and then the same back to its regular position against the tower. Now, as a quick side note, the ship quick disconnect arm on the tower at Launch Complex 39A has also finally been lifted up to be installed here just recently. For years, we have been waiting for this tower to be fully assembled, but of course, as all the Starship flight action occurred, it was clear that substantial changes would be needed to the design. So here we are just now, watching it come to fruition. We have also been able to see sets of both clamp arms, which began installation here on Friday, and the booster quick disconnect doors, which were all here on NSF's Space Coast Live. I recommend following Harry Stranger, who so kindly sends out high quality satellite imagery on the SOAR Atlas site and then shares it on his Blue Sky. I've got that linked in the description to make it easy to find and explore. Most recently, we can see the construction of the Florida Mega Bunker looks to be well underway and houses many of the electrical and control systems for the pad alongside the tank farm in progress. Added storage tanks are being delivered, but there aren't many left to go before all the installed platforms are filled. Notice all these commodity lines which are headed to the pad above the ground level instead of underground like we have at Starbase, Texas. Over here, of course, they have the advantage of a lot more space to simply drive around, so where they can, having this equipment above ground gives much better access for maintenance. So while looking over those satellite images, we also see this progress at Space Launch Complex 37. Since we last saw it here in November, they have made gigantic steps here. The delivery of crane pieces looks to be the exact same LR13000 crane that SpaceX used to stack the orbital launch mount at 39A. Based on some changes in a document by the FAA showing updated coordinates for this new Starship tower, we have had word that the pile drilling has already started in this area, so this is all 3 launch sites simultaneously constructing launch pads. Back to Texas though, check out the launch pad itself. That looks awesome now, doesn't it? Since the last shoot, you can clearly see SpaceX has all those clamp arm covers installed. These are joined to the clamp arms using linkages that allow it to move down in front of the arm as it is pulled back by the main actuator during liftoff. Close by, they've also started with the assembly of rebar to form the skeleton for a new site wall. This will likely replace the prefab triangle pieces currently in use. I suspect they may end up reinstalling the awesome Gateway to Mars sign here in the not too distant future actually. Now you may have noticed that the crane this week has been dismantled quite rapidly with the majority of the main boom being removed. Multiple yellow parts were being delivered, so it seems that they are reconfiguring it to be able to reach a much further distance. Well, that is for a good reason. Across the road at the new air separation unit, we now see a bunch of crane matting delivered in anticipation of the crane coming in to lift and install all that heavy equipment. Well, late in the week, a closure appeared, and that night SpaceX simply rolled the crane over with the help of 2 transporters and placed it down on top of that matting. It then simply drove off, ready to be configured further before it can begin work. Now, notice here they have now fully poured the concrete foundation, including the embeds that stick out everywhere. The crane can't drive on top of those, obviously, which is why it now needs to be extended. Heading up Highway 4 though, it has been an exciting week. If you've been following along recently, you would know that the first version 3 ship being prepared for its first testing has been surrounded by a mountain of scaffolding while they were working on the heat shield and any other areas that they needed to get to with this maze of temporary steel. Well, as you can see, Shaun was out there watching this being rapidly stripped away with SpaceX's work requiring it obviously completed. If you take a close look in particular at the nose cone area, you'll be able to make out what looks to be small holes drilled through the surface of the tiles on one half of the body. We're not sure if these are here to stay, but those holes are also on the future Ship 40 as well. Based on where each of these holes are, they seem to be on the thinner sections of the tiles. Huge thanks to you being subscribed here, and obviously for those supporting us on the platforms below. We've had a lot of requests from you to pick up specific views like this, so it is you quite literally helping us to find what you are interested in seeing. These videos are so much better because of that, so do let us know if you want us to pick anything up for you. Now, action was back again for the S39.1 test article too, with it rolling out of the Star Factory this week. After a short pause in the ring yard, it moved into Mega Bay 2, where it was quickly hooked up and lifted over to the side. The workers could then roll in the ship thrust simulator stand and then lift the test article and place it right on top. Now, we could see a lot of welding and grinding going on this time around, so it almost seems that the previous testing run was mainly just to perform cryogenic pressure testing. Anyway, a few days later, here it was heading back to Massey's. We could see this has quite a few changes since we last observed it. One of the biggest things is the installation of a docking port, but this time it has a female drogue assembly mounted. The more developed quick disconnect system here also has extra reinforcements too, so I can't wait to see what tests the Massey's site has in store. While we are here at Massey's, the B18.3 test article with the partial ship skirt now firmly installed on top is continuing to be further assembled for the crucial testing of that integrated hot staging section. More on that in just a moment, but first, a big thanks to Plaud for sponsoring this video. The Plaud Note Pro here has rapidly changed my workflow. If you're anything like me, your week is just a blur of meetings. I mean, I try to take notes in a meeting, but that obviously distracts you from being more engaged in the conversation. Then, after, the phone rings, notifications pop up, and before you know it, half the meeting is slipped by with a lot less absorbed than what is ideal. Well, the Plaud Note Pro is like having a tiny second brain right here with with you. It captures everything with high quality audio, filters out the background chatter, and when something important happens, you just tap the button there to mark that moment. You can even snap photos of slides, whiteboards, and documents, and the whole meeting becomes a complete snapshot for later use. Here's the magic though. After the meeting, Plaud's AI digs into the discussion, your highlights and images, and then turns that into structured summaries, insights, action lists, drafted follow-up emails, and even strategy notes. If you're reviewing discussions or trying to remember what Julia said last Thursday, you can simply ask Plaud and it knows the answer. The Plaud Note Pro itself is beautifully thin with a clean AMOLED screen display showing recording status and battery. It's designed for a massive 50 hours of continuous use, 60 days of standby, fast Wi-Fi transfers, and you can even have it integrated with the Apple Find My service because that support is built right in. Plaud just released the latest desktop version on January 4th. For many people, of course, the computer is the core productivity tool. With Plaud Desktop, you can easily connect online and offline work, creating an all-in-one work environment. It will even support systems like Otter, Fireflies, Zoom, and others. With that centralized management of all the meeting notes seamlessly integrated, it's a breeze. Plaud reduces any sense of intrusion and discomfort as it doesn't join your meeting and captures audio directly from your desktop. Now, Plaud takes privacy very seriously, already meeting all these standards with more coming. They also have the Plaud Note Pin S, which can magnetically attach to a wristband or obviously be worn around your neck. That's another great option if you just want something that you can keep on you all day to capture notes completely hands-free. So yeah, check it out. With a 30-day free return policy, there is zero risk in giving it a go. The link is right there in the description. Thank you, Plaud. Okay, so back to the B18.3 test article here at Massey's. With the cap now on, they've been installing all the rods used to help squish that test article as hard as they need. This is almost identical to the system that they're using on the other article inside the Super Crusher. Yes, SpaceX is still not done with that either, as this week it performed yet another cryogenic testing run, bringing that up to a total of 15. Over here, the ship's static fire stand is rapidly coming together. Check out the angled side here receiving a whole bunch of rebar getting ready for concrete. It is all added protection just in case we have another future Starship mishap. At the back of the site, we've been closely following the development of this new testing area. As I talked about previously, this seems to all be here to test the composite overwrapped pressure vessels or COPVs that both the ship and the Super Heavy booster uses. Shaun even caught this batch of 4 here hooked up to perform yet another testing run, so they are still at this. Now, I am excited to share that the first ship static fire stand was moved from Massey's to the Sanchez site this week, so perhaps SpaceX wants to roll out Ship 39 sooner rather than later. I suspect they are very keen to at least start the verification process for the new and improved tank farm for static fire operations. Probably initially just a minimal load check, of course, because the ship thrust simulator rig is currently being used by the S39.1 test article. That same simulator rig will presumably be used to do similar verification on Ship 39 before Raptor engine install. We had some really fun action at the start of the week with Falcon 9 booster 1097 taking off from Vandenberg Space Force Base Sunday morning on a new rideshare mission named Twilight. This unique flight wasn't a transporter or bandwagon mission as we've previously seen. No, all payloads on this mission were heading into a very specific type of sun synchronous orbit. This is known as a dusk-dawn crossing time orbit, and it allows the various payloads to orbit around Earth's day-night boundary at an altitude here of about 600 kilometers. That will allow them to have consistent sunlight for most of their mission. In total, 47 spacecraft were on board, packed beneath the fairings, and this included the small Pandora for NASA's Astrophysics Pioneers program. There was the fairing separation there showing the full stack of missions included. It was also a great opportunity to see another return to launch site mission, and here was the ending of that boost back burn. I think it's pretty neat that SpaceX can send all these small payloads to orbit while still having enough margin to come right back home. A little less than 8 minutes after liftoff, booster 1097 screamed back down, firing up the 3 of the Merlin engines initially, shutting off the 2 outside engines, and then coming in to gently touch down at landing zone 4. Really nice shots from the ground cameras on that one. After the initial orbit insertion, SpaceX still needed to kick off a number of second stage burns. Before that though, we can do a time-lapse of the orbit right up to the second engine ignition. Notice this is essentially a specific polar orbit passing right over Antarctica here. SpaceX just needed to wait until the 52-minute mark to kick off that second burn. It was only a short burn lasting a few seconds there, and this put them into position to begin deploying some of those sub-missions. These started to separate away just before the hour into the mission, and really beautiful view of the Earth below here. We had a few glimpses of the spacecraft being shot away there, but a lot of the view was being obscured by the satellites and other deployment systems in the way. After they finished deploying all those, they went back into another coast phase, passing beside Greenland and Canada before the second stage engine fired up for burn 3. They still, though, needed another final 4th burn on the opposite side of the orbit over Antarctica so that they could prepare for the final deployments. The more payloads that separated away, the more we could see, and although the signal through this was a little choppy at times, we had some great views here. Of course, I think the most exciting payload on board was NASA's Pandora, which is an exoplanet-focused space telescope which will help us better understand these distant worlds and more effectively search for potentially habitable planets out there. Luckily, we had a clear view of that separation. This tiny observatory will help complement the observations from the James Webb Space Telescope. What is great though is that this was all built with less than 1/500th the cost, so this will be a very cost-effective addition to help observe and understand the universe. The James Webb Space Telescope is already incredible at studying distant worlds by looking for chemical fingerprints like water vapour, carbon dioxide and methane in an exoplanet's atmosphere, but it has one big limitation. It simply can't stare at the same target for a long period of time, simply because its work schedule is packed with everything from exoplanets to the earliest galaxies in the universe. Pandora is going to help solve this by looking at specific stars and their exoplanets for a long stretch of time. This will build a clear picture of what's happening on these planets' surfaces and allow researchers to correct and clean up the data. During its primary mission, Pandora will repeatedly observe 20 pre-selected exoplanet systems. It will revisit each target multiple times and collect visible light and infrared observations. Now, this Twilight rideshare mission also carried NASA's funded Black Cat, or the Black Hole Coded Aperture Telescope. This is amazingly a compact X-ray observatory packed into a CubeSat. It is built to detect and study gamma-ray bursts coming from the violent cosmic explosions that can occur when massive stars collapse into black holes or when neutron stars collide. It's crazy to me that we can do so much these days with tiny spacecraft like this. The future really is exciting. Anyway, we had more Starlink action starting Monday afternoon from Slick 40 with the Group 697 mission. This was booster 1078 flying on its 25th mission, and again, there were 29 Starlink satellites stacked on board. A terrific time-lapse here of the onboard camera with the ascent. That plume was lit up beautifully on this one. As I mentioned for the missions last week, we still didn't get to see them again at fairing separation. I'm not sure if they were intentionally not wanting to show something a little secretive with these missions, or if they just had some issue with the onboard cameras. The touchdown for this was on the drone ship. Just read the instructions and we were back at it again early Wednesday afternoon with Group 698. This, by the way, was launching from the exact same pad at Slick 40. This was booster 1085 on its 13th flight, and interestingly, there was the first Starlink fairing jettison shot for the year, and moments later, a smooth landing downrange, this time on a shortfall of gravitas. Now, as I talked about last week, we had the SpaceX and NASA Crew 11 mission returning home for what was essentially an urgent medical evacuation. The astronauts on the International Space Station handed over control on Monday as they were preparing to leave. NASA's Mike Fink handed over the ceremonial key for control over to cosmonaut Sergei Kuznetsov. NASA still hasn't shared anything on what the medical issue was or who it was affecting, so there is still uncertainty here. Anyway, Crew 11 had its schedule planned and undocked from the station as expected on Wednesday afternoon. SpaceX's Crew Dragon Endeavour was the vehicle for Crew 11, of course, and away they went. This meant that they were set to re-enter for a targeted splashdown in the Pacific early Thursday morning. NASA and SpaceX are, I believe, still seeing if they can set an earlier launch for Crew 12, but that remains to be seen. It's a busy time right now, obviously, with the preparations going on for Artemis II and the Space Launch System just about to be rolled out from the vehicle assembly building. That is, of course, heading out to Launch Complex 39B for pre-launch testing. If all that goes to plan and the forecast is good, we may only be a few weeks away from this epic mission. I believe the current thought is that this will be scheduled in for Friday, February 6. Now, speaking of moon missions, we even got a neat update on the current progress of the Blue Moon Mark 1 lander here, so it has been a big week. This is scheduled to fly to the moon soon on New Glenn, and if successful, it'll be the largest object that we have ever landed on the lunar surface. Now, the lander itself has just completed a direct field acoustic test to simulate the conditions between New Glenn's fairings during the launch. Instead of a more traditional shaker-based vibration test, they have instead used a ring of 34-foot-tall speaker towers to generate a near-diffuse acoustic field at over 138 decibels. It is now heading to Johnson Space Center for thermal vacuum chamber testing, and they will be about ready to go. Now, I was looking forward to the first launch from the Eastern Hemisphere this week with ISRO's PSLV, but plot twist with that one because that did not go to plan at all. On Monday, they were away to send a satellite called EOS N1 intended for hyperspectral Earth imaging. Alongside that was Orbital Paradigm's KID re-entry capsule from Spain, plus 14 other small payloads from around the world. The initial launch itself in the PSLV's DL configuration, equipped with 2 strap-on boosters, seemed fine. Just a little over a minute into the flight, the boosters jettisoned cleanly. As is typical for ISRO launch coverage, right up to the third stage was largely just these UI views instead of any onboard live camera action. Well, a little over 6 minutes into the flight, things seem to have gone completely off track. The third stage appeared to go totally berserk, at least based on the live telemetry and the animation here. A short time later, peeking closely at one of the monitors, which I believe was receiving footage from the onboard cameras, this was certainly looking like a mission failure. Just a few days ago, we got an update from Orbital Paradigm with that re-entry capsule between the fairings. It was supposed to have later separated and re-entered into the atmosphere, but it ended up falling back to Earth within the 4th stage. Based on the early trajectory data, the capsule seemed to have splashed down in a remote part of the southern Indian Ocean. Anyway, this issue is particularly troublesome given that a similar third stage anomaly caused the previous PSLV mission to fail in May last year. With 2 third stage failures in a row now, they need to look into this very carefully. Before this, ISRO had never really had issues with the PSLV's solid third stage in over 3 decades of operation, and we never really got a clear explanation for the last failure either. I think it's all quite strange given that we've seen them pioneer some incredible missions framed for their reliability like Chandrayaan-1 and their Mars orbiter mission. Hopefully they'll find and fix any issues quickly and get themselves back into action. Anyway, that is it for the week, my friends. I hope you enjoyed this video and of course everything that we put into all these published each Saturday. If you can help us out a little further, please do give this video a watch. It has been quite hard work lately trying to get the videos appearing on people's feeds, so we need all the help we can get with this one. Thanks as always for being subscribed and watching along. I will see you all in the next video.